What's up, Internet? You're tuning in to episode 26 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to talk about the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Ratt.
Hello.
Hello, Steve. You know, we talked a lot on this show about what Sony might do after Xbox's earth-shattering acquisition of Activision Blizzard. And, you know, neither of us had Bungie on our bingo cards. You had something oh so close.
I'm frankly livid with Sony for ruining my risky pick prediction of Microsoft acquiring Bungie. I really should have put Sony acquired Bungie instead. Maybe I'll just go in and I'll edit the audio file and document and no one will know.
Okay, well, you've now just outed your criminal ploy on the air. We have recorded proof that you're a cheater. So long live Pete. Let's run this win back, everybody. Okay,
well, we'll see.
You're two.
Yeah, and of course, neither of us are naive enough to think that within the 2 weeks that we had the Activision Blizzard announcement that Sony constructed this deal and put it together as
of course not
a retort to it. This was definitely in the works in like prior to that. And yeah, I think this was probably more of a reaction to the Bethesda deal or them hearing Microsoft sniffing around Bungie previously.
The interesting thing is, if this is their response to the Bungie deal, it's like, oh shit, okay, like I guess we got to do another one, huh?
Yeah, who next? No, just, you know, Sony, if you need some picks, just go listen to last week's episode. We had some great ones.
Oh, see, I thought you were about
Konami or Square Enix.
I thought you were about to pitch that they acquire us. Like, it's like, hey, come on through. If you need a podcast to spit out your propaganda, like, you know, Bobby Kotick was thinking, let us know. If you need a mouthpiece, Sony, come hire Steve. He's ready.
Yeah, I'm the Sony fanboy here. Definitely not Pete. Yeah.
I mean, you're the one offering, you know, I'm just saying, right? Like, everybody wants to call me a fanboy, but I mean, I'm sorry, the last several games I played were all on Xbox, so who's the real fanboy, I ask, all right?
Yeah, I mean, mine have all been PlayStation recently, I guess, yeah. In the middle of playing Spider-Man, so it's what it is, I guess. I guess I've turned into a fanboy.
Sony pony over here, oh my god. Never thought I'd see the day. So, of course, you know, the main topic this week is going to be all about Sony's acquisition of Bungie, what that means, and their plans to take the games as a service world by storm, and why they want to do that. But before all that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of February. They are, of course, Andy Radford, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Smilky Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you guys so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support. Speaking of which, if you want to show your support, there are a bunch of ways that you can do that. Of course, the Patreon being the best. You can get a bunch of great perks over there, including our exclusive Patreon podcast, One More Thing, where Steve and I keep the mics rolling and we chat about what's going on in our lives and kind of stuff going outside the world of video games. Sometimes a little bit of video game talk. But you know, aside from that, there are a bunch of other ways that you can interact with the show, even if you don't have any money to toss our way, which is, of course, no big deal. You can head over to flipscreen.games, which is our website, and get links to our Discord, which is an always growing community of dorks just like you. It is a safe, inclusive place for you to come and chat games, so come and be a part of what we're trying to build over there. Tune in for our Twitch streams every Wednesday and Thursday over on twitch.tv/flipscreengames, or catch the VODs over on the Patreon if you are a backer at the $5 level or above. And then, of course, if you want to be a part of the show, you can write into us at questions@flipscreen.games. Come into the Discord thread every week where we, you know, source questions, or go follow us on Twitter. So come be a part of it. Come right in. However you choose to interact, we greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being here and choosing to spend your time with us. Let's talk Sony. So, Bungie is, of course, joining the PlayStation family after a $3.6 billion deal. They will, kind of similarly to how these Microsoft acquisitions have worked, the plan right now is for them to remain an independent subsidiary of Sony Interactive Entertainment, run by a board of directors consisting of the current CEO and chairman Pete Parsons and the rest of the studio's current management team. They're going to remain a multi-platform studio with the option to self-publish and reach players, and this is a quote, to self-publish and reach players wherever they choose to play. So that means, of course, no Sony exclusives there, which is interesting, and we'll of course talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean that's the main difference between this and like the Bethesda deal, right? Like if this was a reaction to that Bethesda deal, the Bethesda deal we know they're exclusive to Xbox. Like Starfield is only coming to Xbox and PC later this year.
I think this speaks to the theory that I've thrown out, that with games as a service or with multiplayer like live service games, it's tougher to make that. It's tougher to make that argument because you want the widest base of players that you can have and the widest base of people that you can earn microtransactions from. And we'll talk more about that later. But
if that is the future of video games, which I don't know if it is personally, does that mean like all Sony games going forward become that?
I don't think so. And we'll talk more about that as we get deeper into it because there are some other kind of developments around that, and I want to talk about that more broadly. So we'll put a pin in that bit for now. But we'll talk more about the deal. So we also know that they have full plans to continue to work on Destiny 2 and their new IP that they've been developing for a while now, codenamed Matter. It's rumored to be a multiplayer action game with character-based gameplay. Not particularly surprising, given their pedigree and what they're known for. So obviously a lot to kind of unpack there. But I want to jump into this question from one of our Patreon producers, Smilky Shake, first on kind of the destiny of it all, right? So Smilky wrote in and said, "It's so mind-blowing that Sony owns Bungie, especially after their role in defining Xbox as a platform with Halo. How do you think this will affect Destiny going forward? Personally, I can't see them making it console exclusive, but I can see them giving PlayStation players a couple of perks, like cosmetics, that sort of stuff, to entice people to play there." I think that's spot on, if anything. I
mean, they've already done that in the past. Like, I know if you subscribe to PlayStation Plus, I think Destiny 1 specifically had a lot of it. I don't know about Destiny 2. You got like special mounts and like a unique ghost in the game that was only available to like PS Plus subscribers.
I believe the DLC came to PlayStation first as well, which was like a thing that was the community was really upset about.
That was common with like all of the Activision deals at the time, right? Because Call of Duty had exclusive stuff over on PlayStation. They had like they were well in bed together, I would say, PlayStation and Activision at that time, and since they broke away from Activision, it felt like they went a little bit more platform agnostic and experimented with everything.
Yeah, and I mean, they put out a graphic here where it says, like, our shared vision, and it's got the Bungie and PlayStation logo, and it says that the kind of three pillars are one community, multi-platform, self-published, creatively independent, which we already talked about, and then same game everywhere. So,
which is so funny because like this was not PlayStation's vision like 2 years ago when they were not even wanting Fortnite to be cross-platform and were vehemently against it. And now all of a sudden this is like the shared vision, and they probably saw how much money they made from Fortnite when it opened up.
I think they see the tides changing, and I think that they want to make sure that they're riding that wave, not trying to catch up later. And I think that's the only reason you invest in a studio like Bungie, right? Like we'll talk more about this kind of broader strategy in a bit, but my initial reaction was, that seems like a lot of money to spend on one studio with one major IP that they still own, and to not bring it exclusive, like that seemed kind of crazy to me. But, Bungie makes a lot of money on Destiny 2, and, there's a lot of money to be made if you can create a games as a service and maintain it, Yeah,
I mean, I think live services is one thing. And obviously that plays a role here. They've acquired a studio with 360 people that know how to make live service games. But Jim Ryan's interview with GamesIndustry.biz, where he said he wanted to go beyond consoles, we've obviously already seen that play with their acquisition of Nixies and bringing the PlayStation on PC brand forwards, and pushing things onto Steam and the Epic Game Store and stuff like that. I could see them taking Bungie as that kind of route to get some of their games on other platforms where they don't want to use the PlayStation Studios moniker.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
That's a great point.
like the is it MLB the Play or
The
show
show.
or whatever it's called? You know, I'm sure it kills them that the PlayStation Studios logo is now on Xbox and on Switch. You could just get Bungie to publish that for you and develop the game with the same studio and just use the Bungie brand to publish it, and it could be they could become that independent publisher that Sony wants. And obviously Sony isn't just PlayStation. Like, yes, Bungie's joining the PlayStation family, but Sony own movie studios, and Bungie CEO Pete Parsons has explicitly said that Bungie IP will be pushed into TV and film as well. So I do think that there is more of a tighter integration here, and obviously Sony wants to utilize some of their IP, like they've been doing with Uncharted and The Last of Us, in other mediums, TV and movies. And I think Destiny could be well suited for that. We'll have to wait and see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of like what I think it means for Destiny 2 players, I probably not too much materially. I think if anything,
I don't think it means anything, but I could see Destiny 3 if it ever happens. Maybe it means more there.
Maybe,
but
yeah.
I don't think so. I think they're gonna. I think they would have announced it at the beginning if it was gonna be going exclusive, because why wouldn't you? You know, that's Phil Spencer when they bought Bethesda. It was basically like, look, you know, you don't come out and spend this much money and not have exclusive games for your platform. And I'm surprised that Sony took this approach, to be honest. And I think it goes to show how strongly probably the Bungie team, specifically the management, really fought for it and had that ambition. We know that they were really staunchly independent even when they were owned by Microsoft, and wanted to branch out and become their own, and fought to own the IP, to own the Destiny IP when they signed that deal with Activision. So I think that is just who they are as people. And so I think this was, if Sony wanted them, this was one of those conditions of that deal.
Yeah, and it's interesting to kind of get into that, you know, the why of it, right? Like why was Sony so eager to acquire Bungie, right? If they aren't going to try to make it single player, or not single player, single platform, right? If they're not going to try to make Bungie be their studio that churns out their FPS, right? Whether that's Destiny or anything else. Sure, it does lock down the security of Destiny on the PlayStation platform, which I'm sure is something that they're happy about. But yeah, it's interesting, right? And again, like I initially thought, like that seems like a ton of money to spend in that direction, but you know, when you look at it in kind of the broader context of some of PlayStation's plans for the future, it makes a little bit more sense. So we have a quote here from Sony CFO Hiroki Totoki, who said the strategic significance of this acquisition lies not only in obtaining the highly successful Destiny franchise, as well as major new IP Bungie is currently developing, but also incorporating into the Sony group the expertise and technologies Bungie has developed in the live game services space. Through close collaboration between Bungie and PlayStation Studios, we aim to launch more than 10 live service games by the fiscal year ending March 2026.
Kind of terrifying when you think about it, because that's a lot of games in 4 years to launch.
Sure.
All live services. So
I think it sounds that way on its face, but I am here to assuage some of those fears, I think. I'll offer my theory on what's going on, and, you know, well, we'll have to see how time treats that theory. But I do want to pull this quote here from Tom Warren at The Verge, because I think it offers some very worthwhile context to the argument I'm about to make. The Last of Us developer Naughty Dog has been building a multiplayer game for years, and Horizon Zero Dawn developer Guerrilla has hired for roles related to online games. PlayStation's London studio is also working on a new PS5 online game. Sony has lacked its own live service games, with Microsoft owning Minecraft and Sea of Thieves, and Epic Games dominating with Fortnite's runaway success. Destiny and Bungie's technology could very well set up Sony for a successful push into this key part of the gaming market. And that's actually not even all of the studios they have that are currently hiring for multiplayer projects. There's a number of others that we already know about, like including Sucker Punch and some of the other kind of marquee studios. So
Sucker Punch already have like a live service game, right, with Legends.
With Ghost of Tsushima Legends, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually I think that is probably more the future of what Sony's trying to do here. So we have a question here from Olaf from the community, and I want to use this as kind of a jumping off point to talk about these 10 titles, what they could be, and what it could mean for PlayStation kind of going forward. And to take it back to your initial question about what does it mean for the future of their portfolio, right, and their existing IP. So Olaf said, are live service games good as a whole? We've seen several fail before. For example, Avengers. And are they good for any for any and all franchises, like what they're planning with Assassin's Creed as a live service game? Do you think the planned live service games they release will be part of existing franchises or completely new? And if they'll use... Wait, hold on.
Existing ones. And if they'll use existing ones, which ones do you hope for?
There we go. If they'll use existing IP, and if so, what would we want to see? Thank you. Thank you for writing in, Olaf.
Before you say it, like, give your piece.
Yeah.
That Assassin's Creed live game is going to be fucking cool, and I love the concept of it. For me, it's like Hitman, right? Hitman, for me, is the epitome of what I want from a live service game. It's still single player. It's still a great experience, but it has all of this other cool shit around it that like it brings in on the fly. And Assassin's Creed is just ripe for that. Imagine like, you know, you've got the setting where you go into that like computer thing and you go back in time. Like you get to go onto the computer and you get to pick where you want to go at any point in time. And that you could have like a cohesive story. You could have like something's going on in one point. It can affect the timeline that goes on in this point. I think it's such a cool idea, and I really hope that Ubisoft can pull it off. But anyway, back to Sony.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm glad you offered that opinion, because I think that also ties back to what you know, answering this question, right? So, are live service games good as a whole? I think this is a general opinion, right? I think that there are very few ideas which are inherently good or bad. So, I think you look at Destiny and what Bungie's been able to achieve with Destiny 1 and 2. There's a huge community of players that love that game and play it all the time, and it's the only game they play, or it's one of the only games they play, and they live or die for it, right? And clearly, to them, yeah, live service games are a good thing. But I think you look at some of the other attempts that have cropped up, like your Anthems and your Avengers and things like that, and it happens with every trend in gaming, right? Where you have somebody who comes out and makes something groundbreaking, and then you have people who come up and try to imitate it, or you know, try and chase their success. And I think,
but that's like one style of
exactly
live service game.
You
that's
just brought up Hitman. That's totally different.
But there's Hitman, there's FIFA, that's a live service game. It has the FIFA, what's it, like Dream Team football thing. I can't remember what they call it.
The league, so whatever. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's a live service.
League of Legends and, you know,
League of Legends, Overwatch, all of those are like live service games that, you know, you could even look to say Nintendo. Like you could potentially consider Splatoon 2 was a live service game. They were constantly adding new stuff. There were live events that would happen that everyone would tune in for. Obviously Fortnite. So there's loads of approaches. And I think you can go down the single player route, or you could go down the multiplayer route. It sounds like Sony maybe want it more for the multiplayer side of things. But they have all of these cool single player IPs that they could also add games as a service elements into as well.
Like something like Death Stranding, right? You could see how they could be like, oh, well, there's more missions if you do the season pass and like things like that. Like there are ways that you can make a game a quote unquote live service game without it looking like Destiny. And I think that's important context. So Are they good as a whole? I think that's up to your taste, right? Like, I personally don't gravitate towards that kind of game very often, right? Like, I'm more likely to engage with a single player, story-driven kind of experience than I am like a live service game. But there's been plenty that have gotten their hooks in me. I loved Halo.
The last year you had two.
Yeah.
You had Halo and you had
Pokemon Unite.
But like,
and
also
even,
you've got to look at
even Magic the Gathering, the Magic Arena. I played a lot of that, and it's like that's a live service game.
And I know Olaf's a big fan of Forza. That's a live service game as well. There's constantly new things being added to the playlist. There's constantly new things being added to the playground. There's always stuff being added and content being added. And I think that's what defines a game as a service or a live service game. It's that there is always new things being added. You don't necessarily have to buy DLC. You just log on and there's like a new event happening, or there's something, there's like a new challenge and things like that. Yeah. Like Fortnite, I guess, took the approach which Pokemon Unite did, and a lot of other people have copied. Halo did as well with the Battle Pass and having like seasons and coming back for content.
But then there's also games like Overwatch, which like you buy the boxed copy and that's it, you're in. And like that can work too.
Continually add stuff. I mean, Blizzard's been following that approach for a while. Diablo was the same as well. Diablo 3, they still have seasons. I think they're up to like season 37 at this point. Yeah. It's something crazy like that.
Every Blizzard game is a live service game, really. Like.
Yeah, with some exceptions, like the older ones, Warcraft
and stuff like that.
StarCraft and stuff like that weren't necessarily. But since, I would say, World of Warcraft and Diablo 3, they definitely all have been, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. So, yeah, I think to me, it's like it comes down to like the game, like if a game is making use of quote unquote live services to enhance the experience and make the gameplay deeper or more, social or any of those kinds of things, then yeah, like it can really be a great thing. But of course we've seen a ton of games, not get it right and mess it up. And, I think that's just true of any trend in gaming, right? We saw the same thing when like open world became like a buzzword, right? And like every game was trying to become open world, and there are a lot that are big and open and bloated and boring and empty and whatever, right? But like the ones that do it and do it right, it's great, So you got to chase the experiences that are going to mean the most to you.
So is your view then that their focus is going to be more on adding these live services into single player experiences, or do you think they want Bungie's assistance with, say, The Last of Us 2 online multiplayer, or do you think that they're just going to let Naughty Dog finish that one out and then get Bungie's like assistance on some of the new stuff?
I think it's going to be a case by case thing. I think when you look at Sony and the way that they have historically treated they're like more marquee studios, right? Like by all accounts, Naughty Dog works on what Naughty Dog wants to work on, as long as it is critically and commercially successful. That's good enough for Sony, right? So I can't imagine that the goal is going to be like, hey, Naughty Dog, our marquee single player experience studio, like we're going to force you to shove this experience into your game, right? Like the people forget. Last of Us Factions in the original Last of Us was a multiplayer experience that was like really popular, and like they've been trying to work on this sequel now and everything, and it was originally part of Last of Us Part 2, but now it's kind of become its own thing. So I think like that shows how a project can evolve and change in scope based on the need of it and maybe the resources of the studio or the interest of the studio. Who knows, right? But I think something like Ghost of Tsushima Legends, right, was like, that is different, right? Like that was something that came as part of your boxed, $60 copy of Ghost of Tsushima, and then it got spun out into its own game, and now it's a thing you can go and engage with separately. I imagine it's going to be more akin to that, where it's like, this is how do we take this single player story-driven experience that historically you buy, you beat, and then you don't ever touch again, and how do we make that into a thing that you play for a couple more months or a couple more years? And I don't think it's going to be at the expense of those single-player marquee experiences, because I think Sony knows that those are their bread and butter, right? Those are things that get a huge amount of critical acclaim. They are a unique value proposition for the console that if you want to play Game of the Year 2018, God of War. If you want to play Game of the Year 20, Last of Us Part 2, like, you need to come to PlayStation. And that's what we do. We tell the blockbuster stories in this medium, right? And I think they're proud of that. And those games sell really well. I don't think you need to rock the boat.
But, I mean, we obviously know they're not their best sellers, though, because they do publish those. We do know that the games as a service games, the Call of Duties, the NBA 2Ks, the FIFAs, make them a shitload more money.
Sure.
Not only do they sell more copies, they also bring in all of that, all those microtransaction stuff.
Exactly.
And we also had EA's earning reports here that Stephen Totillo broke out, and he wrote on Twitter, your reminder about why game publishers love live service games and sometimes pay $3.6 billion for studios that are experienced in making them. And the screenshot shows the year-on-year growth and how much money they make from live service games versus full box copies. And in Q3 fiscal year 2022, EA was looking to make $5.1 billion from live service games and only $2 billion from full boxed copies of games or full game downloads. So they're definitely making a lot more money from live service games, and I can see why Sony would want a slice of that.
But and you're right, totally. And I think that is why they definitely want a slice of it, and that's why they're acquiring Bungie. But that doesn't mean that the single player boxed game isn't valuable, right? Like, it still sells really well, it still makes a profit, it still helps sell hardware, and that's important to their business. And I think that, like, they care about those things.
But now, but Jim Ryan has made several comments now. This is like the third interview where he's referenced that PlayStation games don't live on PlayStation, that they are going to be available elsewhere.
But the point being, though, right, like, that proves that those games, those single player experiences, that they have value, and that, like, you can make more money by putting them on Steam. And, like, hey, that's another way for you to take God of War, a game you made now 4 years ago, and find a way to make you another nut, right? And, like, I think games as a service expansions of those titles are a similar thing, where, like, if Ghost of Tsushima 2 comes out and there's, like, a new Legends that drops, and you could try to cultivate an entire community that plays Legends and has never touched the single-player game, and you can serve both of those audiences. Or you can have...
That's kind of how Respawn did it, right? With Apex Legends, that lore and that setting came from some of their prior games from Titanfall, and I bet there's tons of people that go into Apex Legends that never played Titanfall or Titanfall 2.
Yeah, and the other thing is you can, like, keep people, somebody like Doc from the community, right, who played Ghost and loved it, and then engaged with Legends and put another bunch of hours into the game because it was a way to keep them going, right? And, like, that is, I think, ultimately the goal. It's not that what they're already doing isn't good or valuable or a future or part of their ecosystem. It's just like, all right, well, how do we make these games continue to work for us? And I think leveraging them on PC, leveraging them on streaming platforms, creating multiplayer experiences that live beyond the 20 or 30 or 100 hours you put in the single player. I think that's their goal here. So to answer Olaf's question, I think it's probably a little of both in terms of, like, what franchises will come. I think it will be their existing franchises without question, but I also don't think it means that they couldn't develop something new that is, like, something like a Destiny, where, like, that's the core gameplay loop versus, like, Horizon, the core experience that you have is you get Horizon Forbidden West and you play it and it's a Game of the Year contender and great. But there's also this multiplayer experience that you can engage with where, you play with other players and you go and hunt robots and you have a character that's not Aloy and there's this whole other progression system tied to it or whatever. And that's the other way that you stay engaged with Horizon as an IP. And Sony said as much, right? Like, they've talked about how they want to leverage their IP in different spaces. Steve, you brought up the television and movie example. They've also talked about, like, mobile and, like, things that are outside of the, they want to make Last of Us something that you engage with beyond Last of Us 1, 2, and maybe 3, 6 years from now.
Yeah, so Jim Ryan said also in that games industry.biz article that there are more acquisitions to come essentially, and I think a
Yes.
mobile play is next. Like we've seen a big mobile purchase in King as part of the Activision Blizzard deal on the Microsoft side. Take-Two bought Zynga. They needed a mobile play as well. I think Sony needs one as well. Like you look at how Call of Duty Mobile performs, how Fortnite performs on mobile, or did on the Apple side. Um, I think mobile is the next big push that Sony needs to make as well as into the PC space. And at the moment they don't have anyone to do it. And I was also like kind of taken aback that Tom Warren considered Minecraft a live service game because in
It
my
is,
head it
though.
never has been, right, but it totally
Yeah.
is. It has this whole ecosystem, a marketplace around it, and I wonder if Sony can get into that as well because obviously we know Roblox is worth
How about
shitloads.
Dreams?
It would be so cool
What
to
the
have
fuck,
dreams.
man? Put Dreams on PC already. Blow it out. If Dreams was
Yeah.
on Steam, I bet it would be 5 times as big.
Oh, because you wouldn't need to use the Move controllers with the Move camera in order to do anything. Because you'd have a keyboard and mouse and you could easily sculpt and build those games out. That is such a phenomenal game engine, and the stuff that people are able to craft in that is insane. I'd love
Yeah.
to see it on PC and then bring those creations that people make on PC into the console space, which is exactly how Roblox works. You can't make things on the console, you make them on your PC, you upload them to Roblox, and people can play them anywhere. They can play them on mobile, they can play them on console, they can play them on PC.
Yeah.
And I think if Sony can do that and have their own competitor to Minecraft where people make those sort of little games that people make in Roblox as well, it'll be great for them. It's what I think is one of the things I think they're lacking at the moment. Dreams didn't take off anywhere near the level it should have.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's totally on them for not recognizing the way to present it for success, you know?
I would absolutely agree with that. So, to like round out Olaf's question, what franchises would you really want them to capitalize on? Because for me, it really is like the standout games that we've already discussed, like the Horizon. Like I would love like a Monster Hunter World style Horizon game where I can go with friends and take on the monsters and have that co-op stuff. Or Last of Us 2, but with gunplay that's not dreadful, because we know Bungie know how to make guns and shooting that feels good in a
They're
video
not going
game.
to fix that shit. That's not what they're coming in to do. They're not like, here, Naughty Dog, here's how you make it shoot like Destiny. They're not doing that. No way. They're going to be like, here's like the server architecture you need, and like here's how often you should have like content drops and stuff like that. I feel like that's the level of expertise they're going to be providing more so than technical. Or
I
what
hope
mean.
not. I would like to see them have that deeper integration where they assist a lot more. I don't know, but maybe I'm just being hopeful and over
Hey
optimistic.
man, a man can dream, like it is literally possible. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's tough for me because of the way that I think about live service games, where it's like inherently, I don't really feel like I need any of them to become live service games. I'm happy with them as they are because, like, as much as I like the idea of Ghost of Tsushima Legends, and every time we talk about it, I'm like, Doc, what's up? We got to play. And then I just like don't make time for it because that's just not really how I play games. Like those are not the kinds of games that I gravitate toward. And when I do, it's usually like that's the only thing that game does, right? Like it's like, but again, I look at Halo. I liked the single player and I played the multiplayer, and it was great to have one
Yeah.
feed into
And
the
I,
other.
and I wish you would check out Hitman because I think that is such a standout in the
Yeah.
live service space and how they operate and how they do things.
And like that is something I could see being more interesting to me. Like I think I remember hearing a kind of pitch for this idea on one of the Kind of Funny shows a while ago, where they were talking about like how factions could be a thing where like, maybe every couple months they release like a new character, and that character has like a couple chapter storyline, and you can have like Last of Us style storytelling and kind of like an anthology series that's connected to a multiplayer gameplay loop. And you could see how that could be like, oh yeah, like we can take the Last of Us gameplay but not totally strip out what you appreciate about the single player experience of Last of Us, but just adapt it and make it something different.
Mhm.
I could see something like that being interesting to me for Horizon. Like, I really like Horizon in that universe, so the idea of like having an excuse to spend more time there would be cool. But it's also like you get into this weird equation where it's like, okay, I really like the world of Horizon and the story of Horizon, and I really like the gameplay, but do I like the gameplay enough to have that be the only thing that I'm doing if I'm not being rewarded with story or like or those kinds of things? And
I think so. I do think so. I think the loop is quite similar to Pokemon, right? I think so anyway. You're going and you're taking down monsters, which essentially is how I see Pokemon
sure.
Legends. And that's been enough for you. The story there is so bland. Uh,
Yeah, but there's a metagame to it that like
but they could add that stuff, right? They could
yeah,
add that
potentially,
to a live
potentially.
service game.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
presumably they would. It wouldn't be as flat as the single player experience. At least I would hope.
it's just it becomes an interesting because I'm not saying they can't, right? But it's like okay, so like thinking about it with Horizon, right? Like what does that look like? Because with Pokemon, the reason I care about it is because there are like these metagame things I can do, right? Where it was like historically I cared about the multiplayer and that was a metagame angle that kept me on the loop. Whereas now it's like, well, there's the story, the main story, but the real thing I'm trying to do is complete the decks and or hunt shinies or catch this Pokemon that I like or whatever, right? Like you can set your own goals within the world, which allows you to make that loop. And like you could do that in a Horizon, but like I wonder like how do you keep me, Pete, the fan who likes the single player experience on the loop if like because like I don't care about loot. So if the only reward is my character gets stronger and I can just keep playing the gameplay of Horizon without a
What if
story,
it's like
then I don't know if I'm
the
gonna like that as
research?
much.
What if it was like the research angle and you're going out and you're seeing these monsters and you're learning their moves and you're figuring them out, which is, how the Pokemon Legend stuff works. And maybe there is like a dex when you like
Yeah,
find
I
new
just don't think I'd be
things
as
and it
interested
adds
in
it
that
in.
in the context of Horizon because it's
Hmm.
not like yeah, like it's
But
that's
that's you,
cool.
right? That's single player Pete. But I
Yeah,
bet there's a shitload of people who are like staunch Monster Hunter fans and Monster Hunter
absolutely.
World fans who it would get over to play it, who might not necessarily care about the story and just want that loop and just want
Mm-hmm.
to play that. It brings those people into the universe. You've got shared assets. Presumably, you can have a shared map, shared models, shared characters,
Yeah,
a
you can
bunch of
see
the
how
same
it would
voice
work.
actors. It would really work, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is just because it doesn't necessarily appeal to me, it's like it doesn't really matter, right? Like there are a ton of people that played Legends, and like I loved Ghost of Tsushima. I platinumed it, and then played it again anyway on New Game Plus because I just like it. And like if that's how they got me, great. But like there's a lot of other people who they probably got through Legends or like cemented with Legends in a way where like now their stands for that franchise for a whole other thing that's not even related to the part that I like. That's only good for PlayStation, but also just for the health of the IP, right? To be able to bring in people at different angles and not have to just be like we all have
Yeah.
to agree that we want this exact specific kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see where they go with it with their existing IP. I do think there's also another angle that I haven't really seen anyone bring up, which is the VR side, right? We know PlayStation VR 2 has been announced, and I think they're going to want something like a VR chat
Home.
that's
They're
their
going to bring
own
back
that they can
home.
that they can manage, and I think the way Destiny has those hub spaces that you can go to and you can all chill out in and you can like hang out in the town and you
Yeah.
can meet up with your friends and you can like dance and show off your outfits and show off all of the stuff you've bought. They could take all of
The
that and
metaverse,
build these
Steve.
spaces and have like their own metaverse within PlayStation VR
I hate it.
2.
I
I
hate
could
it.
absolutely see them
You're right though.
taking that approach. It makes so much sense. They've already got the experience from Bungie in doing that and making those spaces and having them be, their own instance of it, because not everyone can be in that space at once, but you could make your own private instance, or you can have like you create your own spaces. Maybe you tie in with dreams and you can like craft things and have equipment, and that could be like the space you pull in at, in VR, and then you meet up with your friends, and then you go off and you have an experience in another game with
Yeah,
with your friends.
you could.
And I think the social VR side is probably going to be one of the 10 things that they ask for Bungie's assistance
It
on.
could be, yeah. I think that's a good idea. I don't know that they're quite there yet mentally, but like I think it makes a lot of sense. I think ultimately it's funny how ahead of its time PlayStation Home was. Because if they announced that today,
Yeah,
you'd
it's
be like, oh,
crazy,
that
right?
totally makes sense, right?
Yeah, it
But
would be
back
all
then it was so
NFTs and
weird.
buying likes, yeah. It'd be like every single item you buy is unique and it's an NFT on the blockchain.
Exactly.
People would be
Like,
like,
yeah.
"Ugh, we don't want it."
Like you could see how that would make sense now, but like
Yeah.
or like not even necessarily make sense, but like you can hear that pitch in 2022 language.
I feel
Um
like I've heard that pitch 1,000 times. I just keep getting press releases too to my
yeah.
inbox about it.
But yeah, in terms of other IP that kind of I think makes sense, one of the ones that came to mind for me was like they have a few things that like have been minor successes or things that people don't think about that much, or like something like Everybody's Golf. Like I could see
Well, that studio got shut down though, didn't they?
sure, but I mean like I don't know, something like that, even if it's not that, right? Like something that is more like
Yeah.
a multiplayer experience that's not oriented around, necessarily like loot or like full like progression in that way, right? But it's more just oriented around, this is like a fun, light multiplayer experience that could easily maybe work on mobile, that could easily come to PC.
Well,
Like,
yeah, another one that I could see work great on mobile, and it's like a kind of a stagnant IP of theirs at the moment is Little Big Planet. Like we had the Sackboys
sure.
Adventures, and obviously Sumo got bought by Tencent since then. So I don't know what the future of that franchise looks like. But a Little Big Planet could be a great one. We haven't had a good Little Big Planet for a while, and we haven't had a Little Big Planet with a functioning online service for a while either. They shut it down, and people haven't been able to upload and download new maps and things like that. And that's like, I guess, one of the early live service games, if you want to see it as that, like being able to
Yeah.
upload and download maps that you created and play them. That was the real draw of those games, rather than the like 2 to 3 hour campaign. People bought it so they could be creative and build things and play other people's creations in the same way that Super Mario Maker was a live service game in that regard.
Another one that I've thought about is I know Insomniac is one of the studios that is hired for a multiplayer project. The idea of them making like a kind of like their take on like a Spider-Verse thing for
Yeah, I
within the
know. I was
context
just
of
gonna say that would be
Spider-Man.
so cool. Seeing all the Spider-Men just flinging around the city would be amazing.
Yeah, I could see something like that making sense. I don't know what that looks like. It could be like a thing where like
It takes the Destiny approach, right? And you all team up as a bunch of Spider-Men and you go and take on. I mean, they're also working on Wolverine. They could probably pitch and get some other Marvel properties if they wanted, and could build together like some kind of Marvel game, I
the,
guess, like a decent version of the Avengers.
something that I feel like makes sense with Spider-Man is more the Hitman approach, where like rather
Yes.
than it being because like you think about Spider-Man 1, right? Like and what they did, they had the 2018 release and then they did the City That Never Sleeps, where it was like a season pass and each one came with like, a DLC experience that had its own little story beats. I could see them doing something like that where like you get a major Spider-Man release, every 2 or 3 years or whatever, and then rather than like having like even like the Miles kind of game, maybe it is more of like a live service thing where like they drop, oh, there's new missions that dropped and you can go play through, a short Spider-Man experience, and rather than it being like a 10-hour game, it's like a 2 or 3 hour thing, or I don't know, like there's a lot of shapes that it could take that we
Could
just,
see that, yeah.
we don't know.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Or I mean, the way Hitman worked was you had like free stuff that they would add week by week, like the elusive targets and stuff. But then they would also have additional things you could unlock. Like season one was like the Seven Deadly Sins thing, which I think you could buy for like 9.99, which gave you like additional story rather than it just being a target. So maybe you have those like unique characters from the Spider-Man universe that they haven't brought into the game before, who are taking over the city or doing something, and you have to, whether it's single player or whether it's multiplayer, go and take them down.
One of the other ones that we already know that they're working on, but I think like makes a ton of sense, so you can easily see how it would work, would be like Twisted Metal.
Yeah, Twisted Metal would be
You
cool.
know, they're working on
In the
like.
same,
Go ahead.
I was just saying the same way. I think they could add a bunch of stuff to like a Gran Turismo. Like we've seen the
Sure.
Gran Turismo 7 stuff, but I don't know the extent of how much live service stuff is in there, if anything.
Have it be more like
But
Forza, where there are like
yeah,
playlists coming and all those kind. Like yeah, like I think that would make a lot of sense, right? Like I think those kinds of innovations make more sense than being like, how can we completely reinvent something, right? It's like, how can we
mhm,
take something that already works and like keep it active for longer, right? And like cultivate an audience around it that we can monetize for years to come, you know? I think that's why you see like everybody's golf, right? Like that studio getting shut down. If that had an active player base that they were feeding content to every month, it would still be here, you know? And that can't happen for every game, but like you can easily see how a Twisted Metal could be like, you know, like a fun like maybe. Well, again, I think it's going to be free to play, which I think is helpful. But having it be like a free to play experience, and like, you know, the money that you're spending is on like skins, and you know, like, oh, like yeah, I want this cool Sweet Tooth skin, you know, and like having the kind of like more like League of Legends, Overwatch kind of model where, you know, hey, yeah, like come in and play, and oh, but you want to look cool, you want to look dope, then no, you got to plunk down a little bit of money, you know. People respond to that stuff. If the gameplay loop is good enough, like that would be great, and it would be a quote unquote live service game. But you know, you don't really think of like I don't think you think of Rocket League when you think live service, right? You think Destiny, you think like MMO style, you know, looter kind of loop games, and like Sony has a lot of IP that could make a jump like that and have it work really well. You know, I don't know what a single player AAA $60 Twisted Metal game looks like in 2022. I don't know that you can make that game and make
it'd
it
be
make sense.
$17 now.
Sure, 70. But like it as a free to play, you know, like more like budget, quote unquote, kind of experience, maybe so. You know, maybe so.
Yeah, maybe they resurrect something like PlayStation All Stars and have that where they're constantly adding new things and
Don't
like,
tease me,
you
Steve.
know,
I
you
wish.
could
They
chuck some of the
should.
Destiny characters in there now.
That's another one of those things just way before its time, right? Like if that came out
Mm.
now, it's like, oh, there's such a better roster, right? Like you have Aloy, you get like, you know, like adult Ellie, you know, like
Kratos.
well, Kratos was in the first one, you know, but you get Kratos and
No,
a
Christopher
Trey.
Judd Kratos though.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, you know, I feel like those kinds of innovations are the things that make the most sense to me. Is going to be more Ghost of Tsushima Legends type experiences that are just like, how do we evolve an already good gameplay system and loop into something that doesn't end? You know, that doesn't
Yeah.
have a finite. You have to have a finite amount of camps to take down, right? But like, if you can create a loop where you're going and doing like dungeon runs over and over again for better loot, like people will do that forever, you know?
Yeah, people sure do love their raids in Destiny, that's for sure. Like it very much is loot centric. Which I think is why I got into it for a good while. It's very similar to like a Diablo
Yeah.
style game. But obviously there was another angle from the image that Bungie shared, the one community multi-platform stuff. It says specifically Destiny 2 will stay on all current platforms and expand to new platforms. And we learned this week as well from Hugh Langley, his exclusive over at Business Insider, that Bungie was talking to Google late last year about their Stadia tech and utilizing it as a white label service. Apparently, Google are pitching it to people. They pitched it to AT&T, where they got some of the Batman games running in browsers through their Google Stream technology, which is what they're branding Stadia's like white label service as. And Hugh says in his article, Google last year also pitched its technology to Bungie, which was exploring a streaming platform of its own. Under the proposal, Bungie would own the content and control the front end experience, but Google will power the technology that beamed games to user screens. While Bungie said it would continue to support Stadia, insiders did not know if the merger would affect plans between Google and Bungie. And Sony has a deal with Microsoft to support its cloud gaming service. And Tom Warren at The Verge also added to that in a tweet, where he said that Bungie mentioned that Destiny 2 will expand to new platforms as part of the Sony deal. Hello, Nintendo Switch. I'm also expecting Destiny 2 to appear on the Epic Games Store as part of this new platform stuff. What's your take on this? Do you think we'll continue to see Bungie exploring building out their own streaming service, especially as they remain independent and they can publish other games? And will that compete with Sony's side of things, or do you think it doesn't matter because they are as like this independent subsidiary?
I think there's probably two ways I could see it playing out. There's a good chance that because of this deal, that these plans are now not going to move forward, right? That, Sony already has pre-existing deals with Microsoft. There's no real reason for them to stay in bed with Google unless, Bungie feels that their technology is, objectively better or can do something that Xbox's or that Microsoft's can't, or whatever, right? Like, unless there's a reason for Bungie to keep this going, whether it's obligation or advantage, I could easily see them backing out and being like, yeah, our plans have changed, right? We're a different company than we were 3 years ago, 2 years ago when we started these conversations. That's possible. The other thing is, I think you could also see a similar kind of thing where because, Bungie is kind of acting independently, that it's kind of like the way that BattleNet worked over at Activision Blizzard, where, BattleNet was originally just like, hey, like this is Blizzard's launcher and that's it. And, yeah, we're under Activision, but these things are segmented, right? And then Destiny came to BattleNet because that was something.
And Call of Duty.
And Call of Duty, right? Because it was in the family, right? So it could be maybe Bungie does move forward with whatever this, streaming platform is called, but maybe now it changes a little bit to be a more PlayStation quote unquote centric thing. And like maybe you see PlayStation's live services on the same launcher, and it works like that. That it's possible. I could also see PlayStation being like, okay, well, yeah, you're independent and everything, but you're still under the PlayStation banner, so this is going to be called PlayStation streaming platform. And
they're not under the PlayStation banner, though. That's the thing, right? They're owned by
the Sony.
They're owned by Sony Interactive Entertainment,
right.
And they're in a subsidiary of it. But they're not under the PlayStation banner. They're under the Sony moniker.
Yeah, and that's true. But PlayStation is Sony's gaming brand, and as much as those things are separate, right? Like you can say all day that Bethesda is separate and operates separately from Xbox, but we all know that they're the same team, right? Like you can say whatever you want. When they had their E3 presentation last year, it was the same presentation, right? It was the Xbox Bethesda, but they're still there together, right? Yeah. Fox is a subsidiary of Disney now, but all their shit's on Disney Plus, right? Like there's not a Fox streaming service.
But there is. They've got Hulu, right? That is their Fox streaming service.
Not quite, though. Like, they own a controlling stake in Hulu, but it's not like the Fox branded, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it is different. And, like, I don't think it means that has to necessarily happen because, again, Bungie wants to publish things that are multi-platform. PlayStation probably doesn't. So maybe it does make sense to have those things.
Maybe that's the approach then.
The PlayStation stuff is on the PlayStation
stuff
side.
Is just PlayStation, and multi-plat stuff stays on the Bungie thing. And maybe if you have PlayStation Plus, you gain access to the Bungie one, and it's similar to like the Game Pass Ultimate gets you EA Play kind of thing. I could see that approach working.
Definitely. And you could
it was a weird.
Sorry, just let me make this last point before this. You could loop it into Spartacus as well. We're like, that's a tier.
Absolutely.
You know? You get access to Bungie's library as well. You get a Destiny 2.
Yeah, because it is meant to have multiple tiers on that Spartacus thing, right? There's meant to be like just multiplayer and like streaming, or like you get PS3 games and that kind of stuff.
You can see how that slots in.
Yeah.
You know?
And maybe this is like, rather than... my guess would be, because I didn't really understand why this even needed to be a thing when Stadia existed, right? And what was the whole point of this, right? But I guess it's a way for Bungie to control it all And rather than you buy the expansions each time they come out and getting access to it, because they follow the same approach to World of Warcraft, where you buy the expansions and you gain access to that content, they
But
can
there's
have
no
a monthly
monthly
cost.
subscription,
No,
right?
there isn't.
Right.
No, there isn't. Unlike ESO, where there is a monthly subscription.
And WoW.
And WoW, yeah. For Destiny, there isn't. They gain money through microtransactions and then those paid expansions. I would imagine if you paid Bungie directly for their Destiny 2 streaming service, you gain access to everything, right? It's like a £10 a month subscription. You gain access to play it wherever you want, and you gain access to all of the content. You don't have to buy these additional, like you don't have to buy a copy of the game up front. You don't have to
Get
buy
every
the
expansion,
expansions. You
and
get
like,
everything.
and you probably get like
Yeah.
exclusive cosmetics and things like that, where it's like, oh, you're like like I know they're good about that with Destiny. Like they had the whole like the founders or whatever, I forget what they call them, but like if you're one of the players from Destiny 1 and you came over, you were able to get like a fucking monogrammed sweatshirt with like your ID on it and everything, and like they really try to foster the community of like you're the OG Guardians, right? Like you get this special like I could see them doing that where it's like, yeah, like it's it's like the premium way to experience Destiny, you know?
Yeah, and on like the other side of the fence to that argument, I guess, is that they don't need this. Sony has their agreement with Microsoft to do all of this anyway, so why would they bother? And going back to Smilky Shake's question earlier on, like that could be another angle that they give PlayStation Plus people, right? You subscribe to PlayStation Plus, you don't have to buy the Destiny expansions anymore. They're included as part of it, which was what they were actually doing with Microsoft previously with Game Pass. The expansions were coming to Game Pass. You could play it for a limited time. If you wanted to keep playing it, then you would buy the game or buy the expansion, and you could carry on that way.
That would be a good value prop for PlayStation, right? Where it's like, well, it's the best place to play Destiny because you don't have to pay for those things; you just get them. Whereas on Xbox Game Pass, they're only trials, and eventually you got to shell out. Like, okay, like that could be a decision of like, oh, I guess I will play on PlayStation then, or like, oh, I'll try it out on Game Pass, and if I like it, I can, and it's because it's all one account, right? Like.
Yeah, and you've got to pay for PlayStation Plus anyway in order to play online. So why, like, you're already paying for it anyway to play online with your friends. Why not just loop it in and just have it as part of it? You own the thing at that point. You're paying the subscriptions, and you're getting the money from the microtransactions. So I guess you don't need to buy the expansions. But whether they want to leave that money on the table, because I imagine they make a lot of money from those paid expansions, and
right, but
at least Bungie had to justify the cost of the development of them.
But you think about it, right? Like that makes sense with this model where like if it's only free on PlayStation, that trade is still pretty good because if everybody plays Destiny on or the majority of people play it on PlayStation because they don't want to pay for the expansion, and that means now less people are buying the expansion, but you lock all those people in on PlayStation where you get 100% of the microtransactions rather than if they play on Xbox, you got to split that with Microsoft. If they play on PC, you got to split it with Epic or whoever.
They don't have to split it, I don't think, on PC except their own launcher, don't they? Although I guess if you bought them through Steam. I don't know how it works with Steam, right?
That's a good, I don't actually know how that works, but at least on Xbox, right? We'll stick with Xbox because we know that's how that works.
They absolutely do. It's like a 70-30 split.
It would be the same way that we're talking about potentially how they could handle Call of Duty moving forward, right? Where it's like, well, yeah, you want to spend $70 on PlayStation, or do you want to come play it on Xbox and you just get everyone for free with Game Pass?
Well, it's $70 plus a PS Plus subscription, which is like what? I don't know, $60.
$60 a year, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got to spend almost $200 for the game and the PlayStation Plus subscription.
Well, so it's like $130. It's not almost $200, but it's a lot of money.
Versus you could spend the same amount for an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription
for a year,
and you've got everything.
Yeah.
And my maths is terrible. I'm well aware of that.
What?
The 60 plus 70, my maths is
terrible. Okay. That's fine. Right. I was just like, well, just real quick. That's not $200, but yeah, but like point taken, right? For the same amount of money, you have Game Pass, which gives you access to more stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and we know that their launch of this new service is imminent.
so that could
At
be
least it's rumored,
Sony's
right?
play, right?
Yeah,
With Destiny is like, yeah, well, it's not exclusive, but it's
yeah.
better here. It's cheaper here, like that.
I'm curious who comes next after Bungie, right? It's got to be
For
It's got
Sony,
to
you mean?
be. Yeah, they've got to be trying to expand out that platform now that they're trying to build.
My question is, who's left on the board that they could reasonably acquire that has IP that would be valuable to them in the console space, or owns a games as a service, and owns mobile studios?
Yes, the mobile studios that I struggle with, but Capcom or Konami absolutely could. I mean,
Sure.
imagine buying Monster Hunter.
But right? Capcom, I think, makes sense because you get Monster Hunter, and it's like, okay, they have like legendary IP that you can, like Mega Man and stuff like that maybe isn't worth that much like this second.
They also have Capcom Mobile as well. Apparently, they do have a mobile studio.
There you go. That makes sense then, right? That could be valuable. What about Sega?
Yeah, because Sega is difficult, right? I don't think
do they own any
have
mobile studios?
I don't know about that actually. Apparently, Sega Hardlight is Sega Hardlight in the UK, Leamington Spa. It is best known for bringing Sonic the Hedgehog and Crazy Taxi to mobile. As a trusted internal Sega of Europe studio, they've released 2 titles to Apple Arcade, Choo Choo Rocket and Sonic Racing in 2019. So, yeah, Sega also have their own. Is Sega too expensive, though?
Maybe.
That's
the thing, right? Is I think ultimately the best answer would be, like, if money wasn't an issue, it would be EA. But, it's not going to happen. But I don't know, right? Like, I think Sega's trying to get acquired now. Like, them getting out of the arcade business, like, it feels like they're trying to, like, tidy themselves up and make themselves more attractive for an acquisition. It really does. But that could just be tinfoil hat shit.
No, I agree with you. It does, but then you have to remember that they are part of the Sega Sammy Holdings company, so it'd be very difficult, and that would have to be a split of that merger.
They'd spin them
off because Sammy owns like casinos and resorts and all sorts of stuff that you don't even think about when you think of Sega. Mm-hmm. But they are one company, so it would need to be Sega Sammy going, right, we're getting rid of the Sega side. Or at least the video game side, because Sega also make toys and the gacha and all of that stuff. So it would probably be an acquisition
totally because Sony would want to own the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and that's possible. It could happen, right? That would be the same thing if Konami got bought, right? Because they wouldn't be buying Konami; they'd be buying Konami's video game assets.
Yes, which is how the MGM deal worked when Amazon bought MGM. They only got the movie studio. They didn't get like the MGM resorts and any of that stuff. Right. They were like separate.
Yeah. So I mean, those are possibilities. But yeah, I mean, I think, Jim Ryan said, there's more coming, and I think they're gonna have to be looking at other like bigger acquisitions. I think, could we see them acquire like another like developer in the way that they did like Insomniac or some of the indies that they work with and things like that? Sure, I'm sure those kinds of acquisitions will continue. But I have to feel like Sony feels pressured to make big plays because, they saw their market cap drop like $20 billion when Xbox made this acquisition. And they got to be afraid that that's going to happen again, that they're, no matter what way you slice it, right, their biggest competitor has that much control over their status in the market is not good for them. That is not a safe future when Xbox can just be like, we're disrupting the whole industry, and now you take a $20 billion hit on the market. Like, they are not happy about that. And they must be thinking of a way to try to position themselves to where they are safe from that kind of volatility, and establishing a stable of really, really successful and, profitable games as a service could be a great way to do that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't know if we see a big acquisition this year. I think
Yeah, I think it's
maybe
next year at
that'll
this
be,
point.
yeah. But I think we'll continue to see smaller studios. I think your comment on the mobile play, I think, is probably the next one we need. The comment from Jim Ryan moving to new platforms and things like that. I really think that he wants to expand that PlayStation brand outside of PlayStation. We've seen him move into PC. We've obviously got a streaming service on the way. I think a mobile play makes sense next. We actually saw this week Microsoft making like a Game Pass play on mobile. If you want to play Microsoft Solitaire now and you have Game Pass Ultimate, you can get it ad free. You get everything unlocked and things like that. So I could see that tying in with like a PlayStation Plus style service as well, where you can get games like ad free, unlock things that you can't necessarily get. And obviously that's what Netflix's approach is as well, right? They're doing these downloadable games where you get it on your Netflix subscription, which is why they bought the studio behind Oxenfree.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, with PlayStation trying to expand those brands out beyond AAA, like the AAA game space, right? Like, you can see how, does it make sense to try to create a pipeline from someone watching The Last of Us TV show to playing The Last of Us video games on their PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 4? Or does it make more sense for you to try to have like a Last of Us mobile experience, or something like that? In the way
I
that,
could
like,
see that.
The Walking Dead was able to capitalize on that kind of mass success,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that, like a Fallout Shelter style thing, like a simple casual game.
And again, right? Like, that's not to say that would be the thing or one or the other, right? It's like, well, it's yes and, right? Like, it's, you want to hit people wherever they care, right? And whatever market you can enter and try to carve out your niche. It behooves you to do so, especially when your competitors are doing it.
Yeah. And they've like you say, they've got to be worried about that, especially seeing Microsoft just acquire such a massive IP and mobile studio as well. Like,
yeah, they're about to start making billions of dollars on Call of Duty Mobile
and Candy Crush, yeah,
which is still the #1 game on the marketplace, right? Like 7 years later, like like that's huge. Like, that game will print money forever, and they don't have to do anything.
Yeah, and you tie that into the Game Pass Ultimate stuff. You sign in, you get it ad free, or you can get all of our mobile games ad free, and you can unlock exclusive stuff in Call of Duty Mobile. Like, there's a lot they could do with that to get your $12.99 a month.
Mobile Game Pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to think that they have an Apple Arcade competitor.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that's what they want. Yeah.
Yeah. In the same way that they spun
part
off
of the strategy. I think that's part of the strategy of why they've sided with Epic during the Apple versus Epic trial, and they want their games and stuff on the store, and they want their Xbox Cloud Gaming app, and they want their Apple Arcade competitor, but they can't have it at the moment because Apple won't let them. Well, let's try and regulate it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're totally right there. And I mean, like, in the same way that they spun off PC Game Pass to make it its own thing, to be like, this makes more sense as a product,
right?
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
it was branded so weird, like Xbox Game Pass for PC. Like, no one knew what it was.
What does that mean,
Just
though?
call it PC Game Pass, yeah.
And that's the thing, right? It's like they didn't change their product; they just changed the name. And like, if you want everything, just get Ultimate. Cool, got it. You're good. You're locked in. But yeah, if you're just playing on mobile and that's all you play, but you want to get in and get whatever works on the mobile version, like any of the indie or console experience games that work on mobile, plus whatever mobile games they can, roll in there, like your Candy Crushes and whatnot. It's a slam dunk, right? Makes sense.
And that's, I think where Sony and PlayStation is going to struggle, right? Pivoting that PlayStation brand from what people have cemented in their head is, oh, it's PlayStation. It's that box that sits under my TV that I turn on to play Call of Duty with friends. Like, I know what PlayStation is. To no, PlayStation isn't that anymore. It's a brand in and of itself that is like the games, and it's not just a single destination. You can play those games anywhere you want.
Yeah.
And it's not just a box anymore, because that's what Xbox strangely called box, has been trying to do for the last like half a generation, and Sony's only just really starting on it now, and I wonder how long it's going to take for people to kind of figure out that that's what they're doing, and to understand what they're doing. But it could be that Microsoft has done a lot of the hard work and the legwork for them, and they'll just see it as, oh, this is Sony's Game Pass, and they'll understand it immediately.
I think it all comes down to how good the product is. The idea of like a Pokemon game on mobile seemed crazy until it was the best-selling mobile game of the year, right? Like, the idea of Nintendo ever making games for anything but their hardware seemed crazy until there were successful Nintendo games on mobile. I think if PlayStation cares about those markets and they're willing to give the same level of care to them that they've given to, the console space and the VR space, they'll find success. You think about it, right? Like Xbox meant what it meant until Phil Spencer decided it didn't, and we got behind it. So the proof is in the pudding. You can say whatever you want, but if you deliver a product that people respond to, that'll change perception, and that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so we'll see.
Just have to wait and see.
Yeah. If Sony's willing to put their money where their mouth is, and they can, then I think you have every reason to believe that those moves will come and will continue to come. But we shall see. It's a lot of big question marks with some of this stuff. It's a lot of kind of uncharted water for them. But Sony has figured out how to make big plays like this where they were disadvantaged before. Look at the way that they entered the console space with the PlayStation, right? Look at what they did with VR, right? And they had the worst tech, but one of the more successful selling systems for a while.
It was the most successful until last year.
Right.
Until Christmas, that was the most successful selling VR headset.
So, never count them out, right? Never count Sony out. They've done crazy shit in the past and pulled it off. So, we shall see. But there will be some interesting moves from them throughout this year and the years to come for sure, because the competition's heating up, and that is when Sony does their best work. Is when they're not on top. Is when their back's against the wall. That's what got us the PS4, which is now in the top 5 best-selling consoles of all time, right? So, we shall see.
I think that's the same with everyone, though, right? Because you just got to look at Nintendo, like, what a precarious position they were in after the Wii U, and now how successful the Switch has been. And the same, I was going to say the exact same thing with Xbox. Like, the Xbox One was a disaster, and then Game Pass came out of that. It's really like the phoenix from the ashes.
Yep. Yeah, being hungry forces you to get innovative and to think outside the box. And that's only good for the consumer usually. So I'd expect a lot of this kind of like volatility this generation. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting console generations in a long time, because there's going to be a lot of movement like this.
Can you believe this was only January? We had like the 3 biggest video game acquisitions
in like history, like within like 3 weeks of each other. Yeah, it's kind of nuts. Again, it's the first week of February. It ain't slowing down, so get ready for a wild year, everybody. All right, so thank you guys for joining us here on another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. Let us know what you think about this news, and what do you think is Sony's next target? How do you think Microsoft responds to this now? What's their next move? Let's see. Like, where's this arms race go from here, everybody? Write in and let us know what you think.
It goes straight to the FTC, I think, is where it goes, if they keep tightening up a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. It's getting a little hot in here, So remember, if you want to write in and be a part of the show, just like everybody did this week, there are a bunch of ways you can do that. Head over to flipscreen.games. That is our website where we have links to all the places that you can find us all across the web. Come join the Discord. Come right into the show. Come become a Patreon supporter and get access to a bunch of awesome goodies and help us keep this here show rolling right along, growing and evolving, and looking for that Sony acquisition, right? We're next. So Let's go, everybody. So until next time, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We've been FlipScreen Games, and we'll catch you next week.